Make sure I don't grab your phone and you don't grab mine when we leave. Actually, you can have it. So, all right, great to see everybody as we get ready for Game 1 against Nebraska. Sold out, gold out. So I just want to thank all of our fans for selling out Huntington Bank Stadium next Thursday on Fox. I know our team's looking forward to that. I'm sure Nebraska's looking forward to that. Everybody's looking forward to getting the season kicked off. So just want to thank our marketing staff for that, Mills and his staff, all that they've done, and really looking forward to seeing our band who's been practicing really hard, Betsy McCann and her staff, and then all of our members of our band. We hear them all the time out there practicing. So they're working really hard. And I look forward to seeing everybody on Thursday night. So I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I'll stop talking and leave it open for questions. So go ahead.
When it comes to the offense and how things are going to be different under Simon and Harbaugh, how would you kind of describe, in broad strokes, obviously you want to keep things under key for Nebraska, but broad strokes, how do you feel like it's shifting?
Yeah, I think that, when we talk about our offense, right, I think it started with everybody saying, well, it must be different. You have to assume it's going to be different. There's a different play caller. We still have our same philosophical beliefs, and that will never change. I believe in how you win football games. You've got to be able to control the ball. You got to take care of the ball. You still have to be able to run the football. You got to play great defense. You got to be able to win situational football. I mean, I've said that for years, right? And you emphasize, you really get what you emphasize. And those are things, you've been to our practices, we hit home constantly. So, again, when you look at the whole picture of it, you go back to 2019 with 2 first-team All-Big Ten wide receivers. For the first time in the history of the Big Ten, we still threw the ball 38% of the time with 2 first-team All-Big Ten wide receivers. It's the execution of the offense. And I think that's what and the efficiency of the offense. That's what we want to be able to see with what we do and how we do it. There's different people out there with different strengths, but that doesn't mean the system changes. There's a reason you hire from within to keep that system very similar. But again, everybody has their own DNA and personality, and they're going to put that within the philosophical beliefs of the offense.
When you're seeing a scheme this week that traditionally uses a lot of D-line movement and blitzing?
It creates a lot of issues. We were just up there as an offensive staff talking, and what they do in the 3-3-5, it creates a lot of issues because you can be in a 3-down front before the snap and a 5-down front when the ball snapped, right? You can do that with double barrel. You can create all types of fronts, 4-down fronts, 5-down fronts. You can blitz to it to get to a certain front. You can stunt to get to a certain front. You can create angles constantly. So it's a very complex defense. And without any game film to know exactly how they're going to run it, again, that's what it means by preparing for ghosts. We have a sense, and there's so many ways you can do that. But there's a lot of ways you can do that. Now, which ones are they going to use? How often are they going to use it? What are the tendencies? You can go back to different places that coordinators have been or head coaches have been, but it's still not 100% accurate. If I came from being a wide receiver coach at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then we came to Western Michigan as a head coach. And if you would have studied the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, you would have been completely wrong, right? Now, we didn't win many games anyway that year, so it really didn't matter what you studied. But that's my point. Sometimes people change wholeheartedly and philosophically as you keep going through. But they're very talented. They're big. They're strong. A lot of guys have played a lot of years for them. They're a very experienced team. And then they've added a lot of players from the transfer portal that have played a lot of football elsewhere. They present a lot of challenges. And like I said, you know that I have a ton of respect for Matt and what he's been able to accomplish in his career. And he always gets the most out of his team no matter what year it is.
P.J., in your 7th year here, in what ways have you changed as a coach when you look back to 2017 when you started?
Well, it kind of goes back to maybe when I first got here when I said, don't sacrifice what you really want down the road for what you want right now. I think that's easy to say, but it's really hard to go through. I think I trust my staff wholeheartedly. I think you see how college football changes and the role of a head coach changes. And my job is to be the best head football coach I can be and support your staff. And I think there's growth and maturity to that. And, that takes time. And this is the 11th year being a head coach. You learn an awful lot. We talk about you learn a lot on the way to 500. And because you're never really arriving. You're never there. You're constantly learning. But I think it's just the trust of the staff and really stepping back and looking at what your role is as a head coach over the years of how that role's changed and how you have to keep adapting as a head coach.
Is this about where you thought the program would be 7 years in?
Well, I mean, no matter what I say, I mean, we'll poke holes in that piece of it because I think if we would have won one West title, we'd say, why didn't we win two? If we would have went to the championship and didn't win it, why didn't we win the championship? I think where we're at, we've gotten the most out of every single football team we've been able to coach. And as a coach, you've got to be able to say, okay, did you squeeze all the juice from the orange? Did you exhaust every option? Because every team's different. Injury status throughout the year is different. The flow of a game is different. The connection of a team is different. The playmaking ability is different. Teams change throughout the course of the year too. Can you adapt to that? But we've averaged close to 10 wins a year over the last 3 full seasons. I mean, that hasn't happened in 120 plus years here. But to say that that's what we set out to do something that hasn't been done in 120 years, we came here to win championships. We came here to build something that hasn't been built here for a very long time. We came here to bring cultural sustainability to a program. And we came here to make sure that when we coach our student athletes, it's the life experience. Academically, our academic progress hasn't been higher, right? And that's what we came here to do. Socially, our guys are, for the most part, doing all the right things off the field and working to do the right things off the field. They're not perfect, but they're working to do that. They're a great member to society. They're creating change around them. And then spiritually, believing in something bigger than yourself, not religion, but believing in something bigger than yourself. So many of our guys create their own charities and just do so much community service. And then we've won on the field. And again, I don't get to judge that. You know, the one thing about a head coach, you can say whatever you want about your program. You're not the one that's truly judging your program, whether we're having success or not. You're a piece of that. The administration's a piece of that. We just come to work every day, hopefully get the most out of our kids in every area of their life. And that's what I was hired to do, you know. And but, of course, on the field, you want to win at the highest level. And this is why this schedule produces the most opportunistic schedule in the country. Is it challenging? Yes. Do I ignore that? No. Is it tough? Yes. Is it hard? Yes. I get all that piece. But I'm in charge of putting it in young people's minds of how to go attack this thing. And we've looked at it for a long time about an opportunistic schedule, and they know what that means. That does not mean, that's just, that's a good word. They know how hard that's going to be. And they've trained since January for it, which doesn't promise you anything, but it gives you a better chance. And if we can keep stacking chances on top of each other, then we got a better chance.
You've been through the fall and through the August practices and then the spring practices. How do you evaluate the field goal extra point situation where you are there?
Yeah, I mean, we can evaluate that, Dave, all we want. I think we're going to find that out during game day, right? That's the one position, too, that it's kind of like a long snapper, right, in the specialist category. You really kind of only know when it doesn't go through the uprights or when the ball goes over the punter's head. I'm really, really pleased with where we are with the special teams unit. Not just Dragan Kesic as our kicker. I think he's grown leaps and bounds. He's got a huge leg, and you all see that during the kickoff part, but he's made himself into a really good, solid, reliable kicker. And now he just got to go out there and prove it to himself. He's exactly who he says he is, and I don't think he has any problem with that if you know who he is and you know his personality. And you watch camp with Kesic, I think you know exactly who he is and the confidence he has, and he's a football player kicking. That's what I love about him. Same thing with Mark Crawford. Crawford's 30 years old. You talk about a mature person being able to handle that role. His parents are actually here for about 3 weeks right now, and they've never been here before. So I'm really excited about what he's been able to do and how he's been able to get better. You know, a 0.2% hang time's a massive difference in change from a punter. Not only that, 4 yards deeper's a huge difference for a punter, and he's been able to, to reach those feats in the offseason. I really like our return game. I really like our, obviously Brady Weeks, our long snapper, has been really reliable. But when you look at like the punt team, the kickoff team, kickoff return team, punt return team, I mean, I like where we're at with the big four, we call them. So a lot of people contributing, a lot of depth in those areas, a lot of young players that are going to find themselves a way to get on the field through those units. But I love what Coach Wanger's been able to do. It's taken a while to create that depth on special teams. And, so right now we feel like we're in a good place, but we'll find that out when we get the games.
I want to go back to you said having to adapt as a coach. When you took this job, there was no portal, there was no NIL.
Yeah.
Do you still worry about the same things that you worried about, that you had to worry about when you took over? Have you had to change how you are as a coach?
Well, I think you always have to keep changing, and you have to. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I don't think you necessarily change; you adapt. You are who you are. there's no wholesale change in how we run a program or how we run an offense or how we run a defense or what we truly believe in morally and ethically and all the things we believe in on the field, off the field, academically, athletically, socially, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally. Those things stay the same, but it's how you adapt to that. There's way more on a head coach's plate and a staff's plate, not just the head coach, everybody, our operations staff, our recruiting staff, our general manager, everybody has way more on their plate than they ever have. So it's changing, or it's adapting to those changes that are made, but not truly changing who you are, but it is adapting. There are more things that pull you away from a true coaching football role as a head coach than there's ever been. And there's more time to spend on all the other things, from the transfer portal to the NIL to the fundraising, than there's ever been. And so again, if you don't adapt, you're going to have a problem. And I think that for us, we've had to adapt in a lot of different areas that maybe hadn't existed here before. But the game has changed. 7 years to go back to where we were and to look at where we are now. Yes, to answer your question, of course you have more worries. You have more challenges. There's a lot more to worry about. That doesn't mean I don't worry about the same things I worried about 7 years ago. There's just 20 more things to worry about, right? And but that's part of the role. That's college football. The head coach is the GM, the president, the owner, the head coach, the fundraiser and the marketing team. You're part of all of that in college. It's not the National Football League, but we're just keeping adding more to that plate, which our administration's done a great job of adding some roles that have helped us too, that maybe we didn't have 7 years ago when we got here, that have helped us keep moving in the right direction as a program.
Coach, you've talked about constant improvement. Talk about a few players, starters or otherwise, who have made great strides just even in fall practices.
Yeah, the constant improvement, I think, is sometimes people look at that and have a misconception of that. That doesn't always mean that the line just goes like this. There's a lot of times you got to take some steps back to go forward, but you got to go through them. I think back to year one at Western Michigan and we had to go like 10 steps back just to go one step forward, but it's worth it, and you can't cut those corners. So for us, we always constantly look at that line of success. We always talk about changing our best. You look at guys like, Jalen Logan-Redding is, I think, going to be one of the better players in the league come the end of the year when you look at it. And that kid has done a ton for us, but it's taken him a while to get there. He started on the scout team. Look at Brevin Spanford. He was a 2018 or 19 scout team player of the year. Muhammad Ibrahim was a 2018-19 scout team player of the year. It's the process of growth in a developmental program. Guys just don't get here and you just plug them in. Plus you have to deal with the transfer portal. You look at guys like even Tyler Nubin. It took him a few years just to start in this program. Now he's one of the best players in the conference. Not every year you have a guy like Rashad Bateman or a Justin Wally that comes in and starts as a freshman. So you have to really kind of see how long and who's going to develop at what pace. Some surprise you quicker than others. Some are exactly what you thought. Some take a little bit longer. But that's what's the challenge of college football right now, is who's patient enough to wait for that. Because you can lose experienced players with the transfer portal. Everybody does. But how are you going to make up for that? You're either going to bring another transfer in, and whether you know them 100% or not, whether you know what they can do 100%, you bring them in. And then behind them, there might be a little bit of lack of depth in terms of it's a little bit younger, where now you're playing a guy a little bit earlier than maybe what he needs to when he needs to play. So those are the challenges it brings up. Those are some of the guys like Nathan Bowe. You talk about a guy who's grown exponentially. Nathan has played behind one of the best centers maybe ever to play here, and maybe in the Big Ten history, how good he is and what he's doing with the Giants right now. They love him out there. And he got a chance to watch behind him, but he's also played tackle. He's played in the COVID season, played tackle, played guard, played center, played every position on the O-line, left side, right side. And now it's his opportunity to go in there and play his final year as a starter. That's a guy truly committed to the University of Minnesota. Minnesota through and through, loves the Gophers. So everybody has their own development. But those are some of the challenges it possesses with having transfer portal and guys leaving that you feel are going to be the next person in line. There's some guys that are left here like, man, if we had that guy here right now, think about what that position would look like, right? Instead, they're, okay, we got to play this guy maybe a little earlier, as you go. So
Internal focus on rushing with 4 this offseason.
Right.
What's been the key, or what do you feel like where you guys are at going into Nebraska with that?
Well, I definitely think we're better, and we're going to find that outcome game day. Game day is the ultimate test and judgment of where we're at. I think that's what, you don't necessarily look at the win and the loss. Everybody does. I get that. but how did we play? All right, and what do we have to continue to fix? We do that every single day, right? Practice, meetings, training camp. I mean, it just every day, that's what coaches do. But when the lights come on, what does it look like? I think we've gotten better in that area. We've invested a lot in that area, especially with our 8, 9 guys that'll be rotating there. I think we're definitely better, which has made our O-line better. But you got to go out there and prove it.
What has Nathan shown you during training camp, especially with the command of the offense?
I think you hit around the head command of the team. I think he's grown up exponentially in his leadership, his commitment to the entire football team, not just to himself. I think when you're a young player, you're worried about just you doing the right thing. That takes a lot of energy. That takes a lot of focus. But he's been able to give that to a lot of other people too. So his consistency, his leadership, his poise has really impressed me. And he's willing to learn everything. And that's the one thing I love about him is him and Cole both have just been students and sponges of the game this entire offseason and have been very open to changing who they are as leaders and as more consistent quarterbacks and putting, as much as we possibly can on their shoulders.
We were not there. Was that the only day he didn't throw?
That was the only day he did not throw, yes. Yep. I wouldn't lie to you.
What's that?
I wouldn't lie to you.
Are there any
And you
guys
had
that-
heard through the grapevine that was a bigger issue. So, but sometimes that, our trainers have, 100% control of who practices, who doesn't. We use all the scientific catapult data, have for a lot of years of what we do to keep our players healthy. And a lot of you saw us go to even Guardian Caps this year. And I think we had maybe one, if not zero. If we want to count one or not, I'm not sure how our trainers would count that. But I think we had 0 concussions throughout the entire training camp. So you talk about making strides as we keep going through science and data and our trainers applying all of that because those weren't an option. That was mandatory. So we talk about our medical staff doing all the right things. So going back to the quarterback, I mean, they tell me, hey, I think we should rest him based on the data. Okay, fine. Happened to be the practice you guys were there. I apologize. Don't blame me, though. That's Sep's fault.
How significant is it to have a sellout the first game?
I think it just shows where we're headed and where we've come as a program. There were times when I was told when I first got here, you'll never sell that place out. And, I took that as a personal challenge by who was telling me that and how often I was told that. And I was like, didn't we have some of those before? When it was TCF Bank Stadium and the beginning of when it was created. But you take that as a challenge because you want to, as a job of a coach, you always want to come in and make the place better. Not that it was bad before, not that it had, all these issues before, not that coaches didn't do a good job before you. None of that, like that, I've never truly said that. But what I'm saying is you want to step in and wherever it's at, you want to take it to a different level or you wouldn't take a job. Nobody takes a job and says, you know what, I'm just going to destroy this program. That sounds like a good idea. I'm just going to bring it right down into the ground. That's exactly what I do well. Everybody's going to want to do something positive, right? And that was a big key for me is to get this community, whether they like football or don't like football, whether they were fans of the Gophers or not fans of the Gophers, whether they went to Minnesota or whether they didn't go to Minnesota, whether they live in Minnesota or don't live in Minnesota, to love our culture and love our program. Love what Row the Boat culture is all about. Love what the hyper culture is all about. Love how we play, right? Love what we stand for. Support our team. Get to know our players. And you can do that now at a completely different level with NIL, which is unbelievable. So it's a huge credit to our administration for constantly pushing the envelope, continually changing their best, allowing us to be ourselves, our marketing team, and then obviously it comes down to players playing really well. I mean, you got to be able to win games. You have to have cultural sustainability. And listen, coaches, we understand we get in this thing to be hired to be fired. I mean, you start getting compared to the success that you had, not the success that Minnesota had before, teams had before you, but how you've done. And that's what we're internally constantly doing. We're not comparing ourselves to anybody else. That'll steal your joy. Keep it internal. Compare ourselves to who we were yesterday and be better today than we were yesterday. So that's a credit to our fan base. That's a credit to our students. That's a credit to our band. That's a credit to everybody in this community that have supported what and how we've done it. And again, we are hungry to continue to do more. And hopefully they feel that.
You guys, they're going to miss the game because of that injury?
Well, I'm not going to talk about injuries. Pretty healthy team, but I'm not going to talk about injuries. I think, the Big Ten has something coming out that we can mention that maybe right before the game, but I'll kind of leave it at that.
Have you decided on 5 offensive linemen, or are you thinking about rotating going into the first game?
You know what? I think you'll see more than just 5. I think you will see more than 5. And that's because I think, there's more than 5 starters. I don't think that there's just 5 guys that have completely separated themselves from everybody else, and the other guys don't deserve to play. They do. But how we'll do that, we'll decide that this week.
PJ, every team forms their own identity, creates it. Do you have a sense what this team's identity will be?
Schematically or just collectively?
Like you say, this is what this team's identity is.
This team, it's hard to say it in one word, but we've talked about this word poise since January. There's going to be a lot of hostile environments that they're in, starting with the first one, even at home, against one of the most traditional powerhouses in all of college football to start the year. But they have become a very poised team, meaning control, having balance. And I'm not just talking about offense, I'm talking about in your life. These guys are really, really fun to coach. There hasn't been one day, Chip, and I'm not lying to you, there hasn't been one day they've come in and I've had to get them going. There isn't one guy rowing in a different direction. I've had teams like that before. Not the whole team, but there's been 4 or 5 guys, gosh, I just wish their oar would just be going that way. They're rowing, but sometimes they're rowing that way or that way. It's just, we got to keep going forward. And this team hasn't shown any of that. They know the challenge that's ahead of them. If you look at all the scientific data and all the things we put in front of them, nobody's worked harder in our 7 years. Now, that gives you a better chance, but that promises you nothing. And they understand that. They're very honest with themselves. They love to be coached. They're a very connected team. They have no problem talking to each other about certain things that bother them or their life, which is very hard to find with 2023 young people, as they have a hard time just expressing themselves or emotions or what's bothering them. Haven't had an issue with this team. It's a very unique team because they're confident. You've heard me say this before, that I've wanted a team to do that, but this team's confident enough to know they can beat anybody, but they're also humble enough to know anybody can beat them. And everybody on our schedule can beat us. And they're a team that feels like if they play well, they have a chance to be in every game and win every game. But that's what we're going to go through this journey together. But they are a fun team to coach. They're a very fun team to coach. And, I can't thank them enough for the work that they put in since January, because it has not been easy. And it is going to, and we told them that before, the most opportunistic schedule / challenging / hard is going to take a lot of extra effort. And it's not going to promise you anything. You can either do that and give yourself the best chance, or you can not do that and have no chance. And, they chose wisely. I'm really proud of them.
Part of that fun, Coach, that you have a really good core of veterans and then you have some exciting young players.
Yeah,
you
can say that it's exciting. As a head coach, it worries you a little bit. You have a lot of experienced guys, and the inexperience creates, oh my gosh, I wonder. When you use I wonder, that's a tough one. That takes a lot of belief and faith. But I don't have that as much because I know how hard they've worked. And I know eventually they'll get there, especially the inexperienced players. The older players have done a great job of setting the example of exactly what it looks like. Not somewhat what it looks like, exactly what it should look like, and bringing those guys along. This has been probably one of when you talk about the friendliest teams, meaning, hey, I got you, I'm going to show you the way, that big brother type team. We've had really good ones in the past, but this might be the best we've had about pulling those inexperienced guys with them. When we go scrimmages and we let the young guys play, because we know that we got to bring our floor up. That's going to determine what our success is can we bring our floor up. The faster we bring it up and they catch the experienced guys or get up in that mix, the better we're going to be. The slower that happens, there's probably going to be some more challenges along the way. Appreciate everybody being here. Look forward to seeing you Thursday. Row the boat, Sky Mago Gophers. Thank you.